So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. So it's March 4th was a 1 year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have three little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year, and hoping that it can kind of help other kids you know um, deal with this and kind of find happiness some way or another,
and to make sense and process, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome. Thanks for tuning into the channel. Remember we talked about the night Eric passed away? Well, Kouri said they were celebrating for a closing on a house. Let's talk about that. Since writing her emails about exotic vacations to the detectives, she's been exposed in every way. Not only was she arrested, but the plot thickened. Apparently, she wanted Eric out of the way because she was hell-bent on purchasing a $3.7 million home. And prosecutors, they argued just days before his body was found in the residence in Camas. So, according to the New York Post, let's get into this article. Kouri wanted to invest in the 20,000 square foot home, but just days before, Eric passed away. Let's get into this article. So, it would have cost the couple $2 million in down payment and renovations to eventually flip the home. Kouri had dreamed of flipping the estate, but Eric refused to pay the hefty price. And on March 5th, 2022, court documents revealed that hours after Kouri allegedly slipped her husband a lethal dose of fentanyl, she signed the papers to close on the home. She then invited friends over to the 10-acre property to drink and celebrate the new purchase. Kouri claimed they were celebrating buying the home last March when her husband died of a massive overdose as their 3 kids slept upstairs. And we're going to talk about how the children are doing a little later in this video. However, Eric's family told investigators that he planned to tell his wife they were not buying the mansion on the same day she was also told she was being cut out of his will, the warrant says. Ooh. The home is now under contract again with a new buyer, last asking for the same $3.75 million, and they still have backup offers being accepted. Quote unquote, finished an already framed architectural masterpiece, the listing notes. The property's floor plan features a butler's pantry, an office, a swimming pool, an exercise room, a golf course, a multi-purpose indoor volleyball court, a rock climbing wall, 2 common rooms, 2 kitchens, and a room with a virtual reality experience, the listing says. Beautiful. And this is pretty much the floor plan. You can see all the space, the foyer. It's just beautiful. Made up of 8 bedrooms and 12 bathrooms. The listing notes that the home can sleep up to 60 people for family reunions. There are even an additional 3,300 square feet for a guest/caretaker's home with 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. The listing notes that the home can sleep up to 60 people for family reunions. Drive a little farther and you can snowmobile for any distance. Visit downtown Park City, enjoy Salt Lake City. The unfinished mansion that Kouri bought was already contentious, with locals deeming it an eyesore and calling for it to be torn down. So not only did Eric not agree with purchasing the house, the neighborhood didn't like it either, but Kouri was persistent. The author, who wrote her own children's book about grieving a husband and father, purchased the house from a young widow who ditched plans to move there after her own husband died. Since then, Kouri herself has been charged with her husband's murder and is expected in court to ultimately find out her fate. Now, don't forget, or in case you missed our last video, in January 2022, authorities say Kouri changed Eric's joint life insurance policy, which he started with his business partner, Kouri Wright. So she wanted to be the only beneficiary on that policy, but the insurance company told the partners, they told Kouri, and of course he called Eric and they were able to reverse it back. So at the time of Eric's demise, Kouri thought she was the sole beneficiary on Eric's business life insurance. Not only to mention she had other multiple life insurances out on Eric. After finding out she made that change, Eric altered everything. He changed the beneficiary back. Power of attorney went to his sister without telling Kouri a thing. He was actually scared she might unalive him for the money, since prior to that, she'd had stolen money from him. So it was really chaotic. Do you think he would agree to that $3.7 million home after he did all of that? I don't know, Kouri. You have a hard story to sell. The lawsuit was filed in state court by Kouri Richins, Eric's sister, and it insists that the alleged murderer funneled cash from the husband's bank accounts, diverted money intended to cover his taxes, and obtained $250,000 in fraudulent loans before his passing in March 22. Richins is also accused in the civil suit of taking secret insurance policies out on her husband's life. Wow. Eric's estate is seeking millions of dollars in damages from Richins and alleged financial wrongdoing, with hopes of putting the brakes on future sales of her book, Are You With Me? Quote unquote. The children's book about an angel wing clad deceased father watching over his sons, Richins peddled in the wake of Eric's death. The lawsuit goes on to say, quote, Kouri committed the foregoing acts in calculated, systematic fashion and for no reason other than to actualize a horrific endgame, to conceal her ruinous debt, misappropriate assets for the benefit of her personal businesses, orchestrate Eric's demise, and profit from his passing. Kouri even filed her own lawsuit claiming that she was seeking half the equity in the couple's $1.9 million home, $2 million in proceeds from the sale of Eric's share of a stone masonry business he had with his partner Kouri that we talked about earlier, all of his tangible personal property and more. She wanted half of everything. But Eric's family has pushed back against any of Richins' financial claims. They even consistently pointed fingers at her as a cash grabber since she's been charged with taking Eric's life. Over a year after she allegedly slipped 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl into the Moscow Mule that she made for Eric. It's now been alleged by prosecutors that it may have been a lemon shot and not a Moscow Mule, but it was definitely an alcoholic beverage. They believe Richins took his life over the $2 million mansion deal, and she wanted to buy and flip it, and there was nothing that was going to stop her. But Eric refused to pay the hefty price. So instead, he may have paid with his life. After all, Eric had already told his sisters that he planned on taking her out of the will. His family told the investigators that he planned to tell her that night that they were not buying the mansion. And the same day, he wanted to let her know that he transferred the estate to his sisters and cut her out of the will. As you can imagine, upset her. She probably tried to take his life before he got to do that. I don't know, before the ink dried. She instead took Eric's life and bought the 22,000 square foot unfinished home the next morning and threw the celebration party with her friends just hours later. His family told investigators that he planned to tell his wife they were not buying the mansion on the same day he was going to tell her that he cut her out of the will. Instead, Kouri took Eric's life and bought the 22,000 square foot unfinished home the next morning and then threw a celebration party with her friends a few hours later. But Eric's sisters found out about the party, showed up, and verbally and physically accosted Kouri. So his sisters pretty much roughed her up. Now, according to reports, Richins put the mansion back on the market just 2 weeks later, trying to more than double her money by flipping it to nearly $5 million. In the following months, she made several television and radio appearances on her Sympathy tour to promote her book, which was supposed to help her children grieve better for losing their father.
Connection is the one major one in making sure that their spirit is always alive in your home, and memories are always brought up, and doing things that your loved ones love to do, whether it's riding bikes or their favorite dinner, and just constantly, talking about them.
And Kouri, do you mention at dinner, here's Dad, or Dad would like this meal, or Dad
Yes. Yeah.
let's bring Dad on a bike ride?
Yeah, exactly. And it's, explaining to my kid, just because he's not present here with us physically, that doesn't mean his presence isn't here with us, and he's doing these things with us. And he's, here for birthdays, and he's here for Christmas, and, and it's just comforting to them to know that, they're not living this life alone. Like, Dad is still here, it's just in a different way, a different version.
Well, I opened up your book, and one of the first pages I saw is a little boy. It looks like he's standing in a hallway at school. In a year, how did you process and go from processing death to, I need to write a book and help others?
I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through, and I actually, I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, dealing with anything, but I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night, and I just could not find anything. I couldn't find anything that really, suited them or helped them find comfort.
Now remember, this interview was right before Kouri was exposed and arrested. These women have no idea that Kouri is the accused or the guilty, as many believe. So, with that in mind, listen closely to the answers. They're bone-chilling.
You mention at dinner, here's Dad, or Dad would like this meal, or Dad
Yes.
let's bring Dad on a bike ride.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, explaining to my kid, just because he's not present here with us physically, that doesn't mean his presence isn't here with us, and he's doing these things with us, and he's, here for birthdays, and he's here for Christmas, and, and it's just comforting to them to know that, they're not living this life alone.
Again, if Kouri is guilty of what she's accused of, this is horrific, and the children will forever be affected by this. I think since Eric took her out of the will and she had no access to his funds, she used their children to help with a book to make money.
So you actually wrote this book with your children.
I did.
And it's only been a year. How did you process and go from processing death to, I need to write a book and help others?
I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through, and I actually, I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, dealing with anything, but I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night, and I just could not find anything. I couldn't find anything that really, suited them or helped them find comfort and peace, and so, I was like, let's just write one. And so, I took things that my kids have said to me this last year, and we kind of articulated it and put it into a story, and, just have hopes that it will help other kids.
Grief is not linear.
What are your thoughts about Kouri's interview so far? Is she come across as a grieving mother, widow, or something more sinister? The behavior panel pointed out her body language during the interview was very closed off. Her legs were crossed very tightly. Her hands were clutched together very tight on her knee. She shook her knee quite often, just waving her foot. And she wore a very large brown leather coat, while the other women were dressed very springtime. So they were saying that, her body language was very closed off and like she was hiding something. And now that her secret has been exposed, well, her alleged secret has been exposed, I can only think of the children at this point, because they are going to have, luckily they have their dad's family. Luckily Eric's family, his sisters, are there for the children, because they're going to need a lot of love and support as they grow older. They already know what's going on. They're very aware of what's happening according to all the articles that we're reading. But when they become adults, it'll be very hard for them to process that their mother took their father away and used them to help with a grief book. And it seems like Kouri single-handedly destroyed her own family. From reports and interviews, Eric seemed like he gave her chance after chance, mainly for their children, even though he felt that his life was at risk. So at this point, not only did she destroy her family, she's caused her children a lot of unnecessary pain.
Top of just loving your kids, and on top of just loving your kids and hugging them and kissing them and extra cuddles and everything, I think it's important that I've learned to really affirm their feelings when they're mad or they're sad. It's just that affirmation of, I understand like that you were upset because of this, like let's talk about it. And so I think really it's not it's the emotional and physical touch of it, but really letting your kids understand that why they're feeling the way that they are feeling, and it's okay, and let's deal with it and talk about it.
You're an amazing woman and mom, and we thank you for being vulnerable and sharing this and touching the lives of others.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. So,
thank you, Kouri.
Thank you.
The women who interviewed Kouri at Good Things Utah went on later to do an interview detailing all of the behind the scenes with Kouri, and detailed how shocked they were when they found out the allegations being levied against her. What are your thoughts so far as we've been covering the Kouri Richins series? Are you leaning more towards guilty, or is there a scintilla of innocence in there somewhere? In case I haven't already, shout out to you. Thank you so much if you made it this far in the video. I wanted to get to some subscriber comments for you guys just to see what the temperature is like out there. This is from Tell the Truth 0917. Shout out to you. I always love your comments. Why would a newly widowed mother of three make light of inquiries made by local authorities while investigating the unforeseen death of her very young spouse? She's making clarifications regarding errors she made previously with emojis of winking eyes, laughing, smiling faces, etc. with jokes. That shows disrespect in a huge way to me. It's further frustrating to think a mourning widow and mother would be this openly humorous after the sudden death of her spouse. She was treading on sinking ground while she seems nonchalant and completely unconcerned about what the authorities thought of her frivolous jesting. In my mind, she's guilty at first glance in this case, as well as now. She acts guilty, but like Sarah Paulson, she hands over the information on her own accord, almost enjoying her own sense of humor. She's so flippant, non-caring, totally emotionless in the face of the community, police, and her spouse's family! Exclamation. The authorities never requested clarification. She thought that would make her look better. I'm going to have to agree with Tell the Truth on that one. I don't know what Kouri's intentions was, but I think she did think it was going to make her look better. Luckily, she seems to have a very fair and unbiased judge handling her case, and we'll be here to stay tuned. So, have a good one, and thanks for watching.